Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the noise, pull out what matters, and, well, give you the shortcut to being genuinely in the know. Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating, I think. It's how these really small local things, an event, maybe a business just starting out, a movement, even just a meme, how they can suddenly, almost unexpectedly, just explode into a global sensation.
Yeah.
We often kind of assume, don't we, that for anything to get really big, you need, massive funding, billionaire backers.
Right. Or some huge campaign machine behind it.
Exactly. But history, and maybe especially the internet now, it keeps showing us that's not always the case. So this deep dive, it's really about figuring out how something starting super small, a single town, someone's garage, maybe even a village somewhere, can spiral out and become, well, a global revolution.
Yeah, and it's a journey that I think really challenges how we usually think about where global impact actually comes from. We're going to dig into some, frankly, incredible examples that just powerfully show the force of authentic connection and ingenuity. Especially now, in this super interconnected world, understanding these sort of unexpected origins really helps us grasp that power.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so let's kick things off with a really iconic one. I think it perfectly captures this. Airbnb. So cast your mind back. It's 2007. You've got Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, right? Designers in San Francisco. And they are genuinely struggling, like properly struggling to pay their rent. Then there's this big design conference in town. Hotels are totally booked out. And they have this, well, pretty radical idea at the time.
Okay.
They literally inflate a few air mattresses, turn their apartment into, and they called it air bed and breakfast for people attending the conference. Simple.
Simple, yeah, but absolutely revolutionary. I mean, from that one act, that really local hospitality thing, it's grown into a company now valued, over $80 billion? Yeah. It fundamentally changed how we travel globally. But what's really compelling, I find, is that even at that massive scale, its core, its essence, it's still rooted in that local idea. Community, shared spaces, real person-to-person connection. Airbnb's real genius wasn't just, putting spare rooms online. It was building a scalable trust economy around sharing these very local experiences. It kind of proved that this human need for belonging, well, that can be a global commodity. Just tap your screen and it's there.
A scalable trust economy. Wow, that really puts it perfectly. And it does challenge that whole go big or go home startup idea, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It really shows that sometimes the most sort of intimate local actions are the ones that end up resonating everywhere.
That's so true. Okay, so let's jump continents now. From a San Francisco couch to a culinary revolution on the streets of Mexico City. If you've ever had taco al pastor, seriously, one of Mexico's most beloved street foods, it's just an explosion of flavor. But the really captivating part of its story, the twist, is where it actually came from. It traces back to Lebanese immigrants. They arrived in Mexico back in the 1920s, and they brought with them that vertical spit, the rotisserie thing you traditionally use for shawarma.
Yeah, it's a fantastic example of how cultures aren't static things, right? They're dynamic, they bump into each other, they interact. And the local adaptation in Mexico, it was brilliant, just brilliant. They swapped the lamb for pork, marinated it totally differently with local indigenous spices, and served it in tortillas, not pita bread. And today, taco al pastor, it isn't just Mexican in Mexico anymore. It's globally Mexican. You find it on street corners in New York, high-end restaurants in Tokyo. Everywhere. It just vividly shows how migration can spark innovation, how this cultural fusion thing can travel way further than, rigid tradition ever could. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many other global staples have these surprising cross-cultural roots that we just, don't really think about.
That is a fascinating question. Yeah, we could probably spend a whole session just on that. Thinking about cultural diffusion, though. On the flip side of that sort of organic migration-driven thing, what about a really strategic global explosion like K-pop? I mean, groups like BTS, Blackpink, Festival 3, they didn't just appear overnight, right? They were the result, the very shiny, meticulously crafted result of South Korea's deliberate cultural export strategy. Hallyu, they call it, the Korean wave.
Exactly. That's spot on. The origins, they go back to the late 90s. South Korea made this really significant, very strategic investment in its entertainment industry. You had local companies like SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment. They weren't just making music, they were rigorously training young talent. I mean, everything, music, dance, languages, even how to handle the media. K-pop's success, it's not just about catchy songs. It's really a masterclass in strategic cultural engineering. It proves that you can actually cultivate global resonance. You take hyper-local authenticity, package it for universal emotional appeal, often through this incredibly disciplined, almost factory-like talent development. And the impact today, it's just astonishing. You've got BTS speaking at the UN, breaking Guinness records. They're influencing fashion, politics, even conversations around mental health. It's huge.
So that's the key insight there, maybe.
Yeah.
Global isn't just about how far it reaches, it's about how deeply it resonates. K-pop didn't just get big because it was catchy. It resonated because it tapped into universal feelings, but with its own very distinct local flavor. It kind of suggests that this deep understanding, maybe even a manufactured understanding of human connection is what really fuels that global appeal. And you see that same kind of deep connection, but in a totally different way in our next example.
Indeed. It shows how a very carefully built cultural product can just leap across borders.
Right. And now for something completely different, as they say. Remember 2014? It felt like absolutely everyone was dumping buckets of ice water on their heads, posting videos online. The Ice Bucket Challenge. Celebrities did it, presidents, probably your neighbor.
Oh, yeah. But zooming out from that massive viral thing, its beginnings were incredibly humble, really small. It all started with Pete Frates, a former baseball player. He'd been diagnosed with ALS, that's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a really tough neurodegenerative disease. So this started as a very local effort, just trying to raise awareness for his condition, for ALS generally. But then it just exploded, became this global phenomenon, raised over, I think, $220 million for ALS research around the world. It's such a powerful illustration of how social media can turn empathy, that feeling, into actual action when people connect emotionally and visually too with a cause. Even really simple shareable acts can just amplify a message globally, turn these small personal things into massive movements.
It's credible, isn't it? How a simple, very relatable act can just catch fire like that. And speaking of simple and relatable, let's talk about, well, right now, the age of TikTok trends. I'm thinking about that guy, Nathan Apodaca, the skateboarder.
Yeah.
Posted that super simple video, just cruising along, sipping ocean spray cranberry juice, lip-syncing to Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. Nothing fancy.
Right. And that one video, so unpolished, so authentic, it didn't just go viral. The ripple effect was, well, kind of astonishing. Ocean Spray's sales shot up. Fleetwood Mac, the actual band, re-entered the Billboard charts decades later. And Apodaca himself, he got a truck from Ocean Spray, endorsements, TV cameos. It just brilliantly shows how the algorithm, but maybe more importantly, actual people really respond to authenticity, not just, existing fame or super high production values. It does raise that interesting question, though. How often does this kind of genuine, unpolished stuff find a huge global audience in ways that maybe slicker, highly produced content struggles to?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, what ordinary moment could you film that might just explode? I admit, I've tried to make my cat famous. Hasn't quite worked yet.
Patience. Authenticity can be tricky to manufacture.
True enough. Okay, now let's go way, way back, like thousands of years back, to another truly global phenomenon, yoga. Born where? Indus Valley, thousands of years ago. Initially, it was this deeply spiritual practice, very local to India, practiced by ascetics, out in forests.
Yeah, its journey is just fascinating. You had figures like Swami Vivekananda, late 19th century, and then later people like BKS Iyengar in the 20th century. They were really instrumental, very meticulous in spreading yoga to the West. And today, it's a massive global industry worth over $100 billion, they estimate. Millions and millions practicing worldwide. Now, okay, its original spiritual context isn't always front and center anymore, that's true. But the core insight here, I think, is that deep roots help tall trees. Ancient traditions, if they carry some kind of enduring value and if they can adapt respectfully, they can not only flourish globally, but sometimes they find completely new meaning. It suggests that these sort of timeless principles, even when they get reinterpreted, they can still resonate across totally different cultures and even centuries.
Deep roots help tall trees. I like that. That's a really profound way to put it, especially thinking about all the adaptation involved. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the common threads we've pulled out here? Seems like it keeps coming back to this mix, this synergy of technology, community, really good storytelling, and timing, that elusive timing element, whether it's a viral video taking off overnight or a tradition that's centuries old. It seems like going global today almost always starts by being authentic. truly authentic.
Yeah, and looking at the bigger picture, the internet has just flattened the world in ways we've never seen.
Right.
A potter in a small village in India can sell their work on SE globally. Or, a deep dive like this one, recorded in a pretty modest setup, can end up being heard in, 80 countries? What's really remarkable, I think, is that you don't actually need that billion-dollar budget anymore to make a global impact. Not necessarily. What you need is a story, a compelling story. You need genuine connection. And, well, sometimes, as we saw, maybe all you need is a skateboard and some cranberry juice.
Global starts local. That really feels like the big takeaway from all this today. It means your idea, your unique tradition, maybe even your personal challenge. It genuinely has the potential to ripple outwards in ways you might never, ever expect. So whether you're, an artist in a small town or a creator with just your phone and a dream, never underestimate the power that's inherent in your story. Because, after all, today's global icons, every single one of them started somewhere local too.